Welcome back to another edition of the Gabagools podcast. I'm your host, Jeff, brought to you with my cuzzo, Dan. How we doing today?
Lovely, lovely, living the dream once again.
Of course. It sounds like it's going to be a reoccurring thing, huh?
That's sort of my motto. I tell that to everybody. So yeah,
Yeah. I mean, it's the sun shining. It's like around 50. It's going to be 55 degrees. Can't beat that.
we got a couple days coming up this next week that are going to be almost 70. So
I
looking forward
know.
to that.
I know. Be able to go outside, just get some vitamin D and some fresh air. So it'll be
Might
nice.
even break the shorts out for the first time. So
Oh,
yeah.
dude, I rock the basketball shorts like year round. So, not outside really. I'll put sweatpants or jeans on, but more of around the house, just basketball shorts and let the legs breathe.
So that's the way to do it.
Yeah. All right. Let's just since this is episode 2, let's just spend a couple minutes just telling the viewers just about a little bit about ourselves, like our fandoms, and just go from there. So we can start with you, just go your basketball teams, your football team, your baseball team, whatever we need to go over. So I'll pass it on to you.
Okay. Well, I mean that's pretty easy for me. I'm when it comes to sports teams, I'm pretty Chicago based. I like other teams, obviously, just because I got a lot of players I like with other sports. Um, but you know, as far as favorite teams go, definitely Cubs fan. When it comes to baseball, doubles, got to be a Bulls fan, of course. The Hawks, obviously, don't follow the Hawks as much. That's probably the sport I follow the least, but that's also the team that for Chicago that's been our best team we've had for the last 10, 15 years or so. So and then of course, I mean it's sad to say I'm a Bears fan, but hopefully, with some of these picks we've got and some of the things, hopefully we can, hit on some of these picks, maybe make a couple trades. I know that's asking a lot with who we've got running that organization, but yeah, those are my pretty standard as a Chicago guy, as you will.
Yeah, makes it easy. Yeah. For the Bears at least, they have everything in place to be a good team. They have the cap space. Um, you know, they might be moving to a new stadium, which will be nice. Um, and then we'll just end up let's go from there. That'll be fun to go see a new stadium too. As for me, I'd have to say obviously I'm a White Sox fan, so it's going to make it a little bit more fun to cover both sides of the town, as we have the fandom. And then when it comes to football, I am a Jets fan, New York Jets fan. The reason behind that is I'm also a USC Trojans fan for college football. So I started liking them when Mark Sanchez went to the Jets, when he was drafted there, I think what, '09, or '08, and then just kind of stuck with them ever since. They had Sam Darnold, which was cool. He never really got a shot. And then obviously pretty much for NBA and NHL, Hawks and Bulls, that's pretty easy. And then for college basketball, I do like North Carolina. I know it's kind of like, oh, why do you like East Coast or whatever? It's kind of all over the place, but Michael Jordan played there, so it's like one of those things, you can kind of correlate and be like a team to root for. So I have been very fortunate to at least be able to have North Carolina be good for me too. And then, growing up, obviously USC was just a powerhouse, and hopefully we get back to that soon. And then obviously just miserable White Sox right now, which they won't be, you know, won't go too much of a pity party, but changes won't be made until Reinsdorf is no longer handling that team.
Yeah, obviously you got to get. I mean, he's got his. I mean, we can get into Jay Reinsdorf on another day on another
Yeah,
podcast, but
absolutely. We'll spend a lengthy complaint session on him.
yeah, hopefully for your sake, though, with those White Sox, you guys, we touched upon that a little bit last week, but you guys have, as you have a couple stars over there. You've already upgraded that farm system, so it's a
Yeah.
bit of a waiting game. You make another trade or two, and you guys, next couple of years, you call those prospects up and you start it all over again.
Yeah, I mean, Edgar Kiro had the game-winning hit in spring training yesterday. Not like it makes a difference, but him, Colson Montgomery, it's they did do a decent job of restocking the farm as we touched on last week. So optimistic of just, I mean, I don't have any expectations for the team anymore. But it's gonna be nice that they kind of once again are trying. They never came out and said they're rebuilding, which is frustrating, but inside of its own. Yeah, we'll see on that one, but. Since I mentioned my fandom for North Carolina, let's touch on some college basketball. Now, do you follow it very deeply or not really? Just around March?
I try to follow it a decent amount. I usually get into it more towards end of February. Once March hits, I usually start. I mean, especially for once it's time to do the brackets and everything, I like to kind of try to get myself familiarized towards the end of the season, watch the tournament play right before we get into the brackets, try to
Yeah.
see who's hot, who's not. That's usually my way of trying to fill out the bracket best way I can. So I've been slowly getting into it a little bit more
Yeah.
the last week or two.
Awesome. Yeah. That's it. It is honestly one of my favorite times of the year outside of probably like opening day or even,
Agreed.
NFL kickoff is the couple days of March Madness. I have a couple TVs up in my basement where I can, watch multiple games. And then obviously with being able to do the quad screen on YouTube TV, you can't beat that. So we'll be able to watch a bunch of them. But yeah, it's like Christmas to me. It's one of my favorite. It should be a national holiday when we do March Madness, at least those Thursday through Fridays. Filling out the bracket. I usually wait until at least Wednesday night to fill it out, but it'll be good. Good. We'll have to share our brackets and who we got going. I am pretty much a big homer when it comes to North Carolina. I will always at least try to put them in my final four. And this year they are looking good. They're 20-6 currently. They're ranked 10th. They'll move up. There was a lot of losses this week. They're kind of an up and down team. Just a brief thing on that. They do have their, veteran leadership with RJ Davis and Armando Baycott. So, you got the two things that you want in March. You want a big man that can score, and you also want your guard play to be, immaculate. So, we can go from there. But rounding out the top 10, we got UConn, Houston, Purdue, Arizona, Tennessee, Iowa State, Marquette, Duke, Kansas, Carolina. And that's just the top 10 right now. So is there anything that really stuck out to you when were looking at it?
Yeah, I was just looking at that before we hopped on here. I don't know if you can share the screen. I was just looking at the top, I think 25, and then right at the bottom of that, what that was more interesting to me was some of the teams that had just fallen out of the top 25 and or who aren't in it right now. And um, there's some schools in there that you don't always see in the top 25. I think 8, 9, 10 was Duke, Kansas and North Carolina. Yeah. So those three, they're, I mean, perennial powerhouses, top 10 every year. I mean, those three are usually closer to top five or so. But those three are, you could pretty much pencil them in every year at the top 10. And when you look at the well, just going through some more of these teams, nice to see Illinois in there at 12. We've had a nice year again.
Yeah.
At the very top, I look at UConn. I mean, they obviously with the year they had last year, great year, and they look even better this year. So
Yeah.
you're gonna have to. They look scary good. Purdue is a team that I feel is a sorry Boilermaker fans, but they seem to choke all the time when it comes to the big dance. But
Yeah.
man, do they look good again this year? You got a couple shooters. Edie is regarded as the best player in the sport right now. So
Yeah.
you never really know when you have a big guy like that. You got some, like I said, they have some other really talented guys. So I like Purdue, but the question is, how much do I really like them when it comes time to for the dance?
Oh yeah.
Um, some of these other teams in here, I mean, one that jumps out at me is Washington State at 21. Having them in there, you definitely don't see them top 10 or top 25. So good for them to be in there. Colorado State too. I know they've had an interesting season, but they're still up there.
The,
But
the Mountain West
some
in
of
general has been just a kind of a surprise. When you kind of look at, years past, the Mountain West always is competitive with San Diego State and a couple other teams. And they may always end up with a lot of teams in the tournament. They have a horrible record though. I think in the last couple of years, I think they have like one win total. Um, so that'll be an interesting when it comes to tournament time. And yeah, as you said, just rounding it out, like we have a lot of just, a nice diverse team, like across the board. Tennessee is back. So it's kind of good to see them back. They're kind of a fun team in the tournament. Arizona, with Caleb Love going over there from Carolina. That it was tremendous signing or through NIL to get him to transfer there. And as you said, yeah, Purdue is just a powerhouse. But yeah, when it comes to tournament time, I don't think I can. Usually, I bet against them at least in the second round, because I just never trust them. And usually, the years I do trust them, they burn me, and then when I don't, they end up making like a Sweet 16 run. Baylor's always tough. I mean, Kansas and Duke. Filipkowski just got banged up yesterday. I don't know if you saw that with the court storming.
Yeah, I was waiting for someone to bring it up. I mean, what are we doing here with these kids? I mean,
Yeah.
I get you want to get excited, but I mean that's one of your best players, if not your best player on your team. And I mean, we it's a shame. I mean, I don't know if they've come out and said what the injury is or how much time he may or may not miss. But I mean, if he ends up missing some games or potentially all of March Madness, that is a huge loss for Duke.
Yeah, especially come tournament time or conference tournament time too. It's going to hurt them. Um, that being said, like touching on that topic, I mean, something has to be done about it because three players this year alone have gotten hurt from it. I mean, Caitlin Clark got plowed over. I mean, she did. If you watch
Yeah,
the background of it, if you ever watch the slow motion, it was kind of crazy because like she really like flew back, but still, it's like enough is enough. People are getting hurt, and I was surprised there hasn't been more in years past that we at least heard about. When it comes to these court stormings. But yeah, hopefully they come out soon and do a little bit of something different when it comes to these court stormings, and either add security or even just ban it altogether and start putting harsh penalties on these schools that do it. Yeah, it's going to take out a little element of the game and the fun, but you know what? It's going to affect the game more and more.
absolutely. And real quick before I forget, I wanted
Yeah.
to mention on some of the teams that are not in the top 25. You look at Virginia, Gonzaga, Wisconsin, some big time schools that usually every year are not only in the top 25, but usually pretty highly ranked in that top 25. So, yeah, I mean, I think you mentioned it. There's a nice, I don't know if parity is the right word, but there's a nice, you've
Variety.
got some schools in here, like we said, that, aren't always in the top 25. And you've got some schools, I mean, Wisconsin, they're up there sometimes. I mean, Gonzaga, the last, I don't know how many years has been, I mean, they're one of the top teams every year. For them to not be in the top 25 just doesn't even seem right to me.
Right. I think Gonzaga had a lot of just turnover. I think that was one big thing. They had a lot of their seniors graduate finally, and from the past teams. And then Wisconsin was ranked in the top five, and then they kind of fell back to earth and just got annihilated. But yeah, Illinois being in there for the Big Ten is like the main one that I see. And obviously Purdue, we already talked about them at nauseum. But Kentucky is one of those teams that I think this year, when it's coming tournament time, I think we're going to see a new level come out of them. I don't know if they play Tennessee again. I'll have to look that up and fact check myself, but that'll be a fun game to watch. But Auburn's tough too. And Kentucky didn't beat Auburn in Auburn for like years, and they finally did it. And kind of ever since that game, they've been on just a war path. So that would be like one of the teams that I'm going to keep my eye on, little circle and see who they get matched up with. If the good news about this year for watching sake is there's been a ton of upsets. UConn lost, I think last week or earlier this week. Um,
Yeah.
just teams are just constantly, going over the top, losing, falling back down, up top, losing, doing it. It's been a recurring you know, uh, turnover basically. I do expect Carolina to get like at least a two seed. Um, we'll see come tournament time or, conference tournament time, that is that, if they win out the rest of the year, they probably might sneak out a one seed, but that would involve Arizona, Purdue, Houston, UConn all losing. Um, and that will be tough because they all have significantly less losses and probably a couple bigger wins. I know Purdue does at least.
Yeah, it's one of those years where, just like you said, I mean, you could definitely see Carolina jumping in, getting the two. I mean, you could. I don't know if it'd be that far fetched to see them jump up and get the one. They do have six losses, but yeah, it's one of those years where, um, you look at it and I mean, yeah, obviously anything can happen, but if it's got that feel more this year. I feel so.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, we're definitely getting into that year where season's getting down to the end. We're getting ready for conference tournament play in a couple of weeks, and then the best time of the year is
Yeah.
is almost upon us.
Yep. And then we'll just review our brackets come, come when those release on the 17th. Probably that Sunday night, you and I will just do a podcast post fantasy baseball draft too. We could do a little review on that and then touch on our brackets, um, you know, throughout the process and enjoy it. But yeah, we also have to give our rose to the new, women's all-time scoring leader, Caitlin Clark, out of Iowa. She earned her pinstripes, as we like to say. So, hats
Oh
off,
man, I mean
to her.
that was wild. Yeah, congratulations. I mean, and she's a junior, correct?
Senior. I think her senior year. I think.
Oh,
Let me
okay.
just,
I
let's
Yeah, I
lock.
mean she's been unreal though. I mean, watching her the
Senior
last
year.
couple
Yeah.
years, I mean, I I mean obviously there's other good teams too, but I mean, man, I just feel like she's got to feel like she's on a mission after last year. I mean, they had a great year last year.
Yeah.
Obviously, came up a little short against LSU in that championship game, but I feel like she's thinking that I mean this got to be the year for her. So I mean, we'll see. But
Yeah.
I
The
mean,
team to beat there is South Carolina for sure.
yeah, I mean, yeah, yeah, for sure.
25,
But I
25
mean,
and 0.
it's tough though. So with Caitlin Clark playing the way she's played and becoming the scoring, all time scoring leader. I mean, you almost wouldn't want to place a bet against her. I know South Carolina looks
Yeah.
like, you know, but you just never know. You never know.
Yeah. Hopefully we're lucky and they're matched up on the other sides of the bracket. So then,
Yeah,
we'll get to see a, championship out of them.
agreed.
Anything else out of college basketball you want to bring up?
Um, just waiting for those conference tournaments to start. Obviously, I'm going to be starting to watch a lot more these next
Yeah.
couple weeks and be familiarizing myself with everyone. But yeah, I'm just waiting for once those conference tournaments to get started, and then it's madness.
Yep. As they like to say, it is. All right. Moving on to the next segment would be our Blackhawks. Um, I would like to say there isn't a lot to talk about, but there is a good note happening today, at least when we're filming, is Chris Chelios is getting his jersey hung up. Big player from the '90s. I think it's ironic that they're doing it on the same day that they play against Detroit Red Wings, two teams he played for. Hats off to Chelios on getting number 7 retired. Hopefully Seabrook will be next, and they could do a split banner for the number 7 to be retired. Just an iconic player for at least your '90s Blackhawks.
Yeah, I believe he's a hometown guy too, right? He's from Chicago.
I believe so. Let me fact check it, but I believe he is from Chicago.
That's always crazy. I mean, to grow up in your hometown and then to play for your hometown and it's just to be that type of player, have your number retired and all that. That has to be one of the greatest things for an athlete.
Yeah,
And
it's
hats off to him. I
yeah,
mean, great career and I don't have as much to say on the Blackhawks, so I'll defer more to you. But yeah, I mean,
that's fine.
congratulations to him.
Yeah, absolutely. 3-time Norris winner. He won 3 Stanley Cups. Um, you know, Hall of Famer. Obviously, we already touched on it, but yeah, hats off to him. And then the best part is this is Patrick Kane, as you can see the jersey behind me. It's his return to Chicago first game, I believe, as not on the Hawks, which is just a crazy thing to think about. Just for what he did for the Hawks is just, you can't chalk up a better career. 3 cups, rookie of the year. He won the MVP, he won, Conn Smythe. And you just can't chalk up a better time to come back.
As a Blackhawks junkie, as I would refer to you,
Yeah.
what's crazier? Is it um, Kane not being part of the Blackhawks anymore, or him being a member of the Red Wings?
Yeah, it's a good question. Because Detroit is in a different conference now, there isn't the rivalry that we had, late, I mean, forever. But just but when I think back to like 2009, we made it to the conference finals, and we played against the Red Wings, we lost. Um, you know, that was a crazy thing just to think about. So probably honestly seeing him just not as a Blackhawk is just weird, to answer your question.
Yeah, I know. Obviously, in hockey, you've got the salary cap, but it seemed like when the Blackhawks were in that dynasty, they won 3 and 6 or 3 and 7 years.
Yep.
It just seemed like Tays and Kane were kind of like they were mainstays, and it seemed like from someone more looking outside than in
Yeah.
that those would probably be one, if not both of them, would maybe be lifers, and they'd hang them up as a Blackhawk. But I know that's a lot more difficult to do in the NHL with the salary cap and everything. So
Yeah, yeah. I think overall the Blackhawks direction was kind of just to, out with the old, in with the new. Let's get some new faces in here, new veteran leadership. I personally think they should have never wore another jersey in their careers. Um, I think if they would have told Patrick, I mean, if they would have said to Kane, "Hey, you are going to be a lifetime Blackhawk. You're going to help this transition with Bedard." I know that's one kind of like moving on to a separate topic about it. There would be that like thought, like, "Oh, would we have gotten Bedard if Kane would have played?" 100% because he had hip surgery this off season, right? So he just came back maybe a month or two ago, to playing. They could have easily had him get his hip surgery end of last year. They still lose. They would still lose. They don't have the talent on that team, shipped out a ton. That could have been a direction they went. That's what I would have done. Just he is the greatest American hockey player ever currently. And he's still kicking. I mean, he looks great. The last couple games he's been lighting up the, stat sheet. Yeah, kind of a letdown, but I think overall the direction the Hawks are going is favorable. I'd say outside of the Bears having so many, picks and just options, you'd have to throw the Blackhawks in that conversation of the team probably next to win a championship, or at least I don't know. We're from Chicago, maybe just even playoff berths at this point. The way Bedard is progressing, he's phenomenal. Anytime he touches the puck, it is must watch. It almost reminds me of a like he's a better, I don't want to say better version of Kane, but like watching him his rookie year, they're just electric. And you don't really see the similarities, I wouldn't say, but you just see a whole, you know, excitement when he touches the puck.
yeah, that's what I was just going to ask you because I know that. I mean, I know he just came back from that broken jaw recently, which is, I mean, tough mother effer if you ask me. But
Yeah.
um, he, yeah, I think Gretzky regarded him as like one of the next like you know it guys. And I was going to ask you, as far as I mean, you could try to compare him to Kane early in his career, or even anybody else who's been regarded as that. Where do you think a guy like Connor Bedard could be at the end of his career? Do you think he could rival some of the greats in the game? Do you think he could be as good, if not better, than Kane?
Hands down, I think he can be, just because whenever he touches the puck, somebody has a chance to score. And that is something that Patrick Kane does do, but he can 100% be better than Kane. He's like a Connor McDavid, if you are familiar with him at all from the Oilers. The hype around him when he was drafted was huge, and he usually leads the league in points, goals, or everything. Um, we can never compare anyone to Gretzky, um, because nobody will ever put up numbers like that. It's just physically impossible. If somebody ever comes close, I mean, he's got more. I think he's got more assists than the next person has points, which is just an insane stat. Someone could fact check me if I'm a little bit wrong, but spitballing off the top of my head, um, Bedard is on our Mount Rushmore of future Chicago players, and he will be that guy that sells, box office tickets basically for years to come. And the Hawks are going to build around him. That's something I'm actually not worried about because we have a ton of picks. We have a ton of just talent that's coming through. Kevin Krasinski, which would also kind of just touch into my future point about the next overall, number one overall pick, because the Hawks are having the worst record right now. They're the least amount of points. People would, as long as you have a direction of where you're going, like they came out and said, we're doing a rebuild. After Bowman was fired or let go or left on his own accord, whatever it was, we had the direction. We lost for Bedard. Lottery balls fell in our court. We can talk all day whether, the NHL was smart and was like, hey, we realize that, you need Chicago to be good because it's going to bring more to the NHL. You're going to bring in more money. Bedard being in a original six team, perfect. But the next guy would be Macklin Celebrini. He plays at Boston University. Um, and what I could say briefly about him too before I pass it over to you is he's just a dynamic forward who produces at a huge level. On power play, he's a goal scorer. He can play make. Him and Bedard would be just Taves and Kane reincarnated, but better, younger, faster, more highly regarded. Granted, Taves was the top three pick, so let's not talk about Patrick Kane number one. You know, having those type of players is just going to be a foundation, and it's going to make the team even more attractive to come to. So like it's not going to be a problem where it's like, oh, no one wants to play in Chicago. It's not like the Bulls where it's like people will love to play with Bedard and people just rave about him, and then just overall, the foundation that they do.
So when do you think we'll get this? You said Salabrini is his last name.
Celebrini, yeah. So
When do you
he's
think he'll come up?
so I mean he's only like 17 at the point at this moment, I think. So he'll go number one in the draft next year. If we do, lottery balls have to fall in place, but right now it's trending that way. The good news is that we have a good shot at him. If he does, it might be a year away, maybe. So we're in 2024. I mean, he could be up by next season. Like I could easily see it. He's that talented. If not, then the year after or mid-season.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, and so where are the Hawks standings wise right now? Are they middle of the road?
They are at the bottom of the barrel. They are last, dead last. And as you know, they do it by points as well. So if you win, you get 2 points. If you go to overtime, you guys split and you each get one, then the winner gets an extra point.
Right.
They're sitting at 15 and 39 with 34 points. Next closest to them is San Jose, which they're a dumpster fire as well. But they're 15 and 36, and they have 35 points. So basically, as long as the Hawks keep losing, all roads are leading to Celebrini, which would be just uh life changing for this franchise. And we have a ton of picks. We have two first round picks this year. And then the following year we also have another one, which is from Toronto. We ended up with Toronto's first overall, our first pick too. So that's going to be huge. So we have lots
How's
of
the?
draft capital.
I was just going to say, how's the cap space looking too? Do we have some room to spend some money since we're at the
We
bottom?
will, and the good thing, so I'm not sure how familiar you are with how the cap works in the NHL, but you actually have a floor. So you know how we'll compare it to baseball for you is how the Oakland A's are the dumpster fire, cheap, don't spend more than 7 million on a player, essentially, right? Uh,
Yeah.
per- you can't do that in the NHL. You have to have, I think, I don't even have a foggy as to what their cap is, but you need to be above like 30 or 40 million, I believe. And I can try to fact check that while we're talking. But there's no cap penalties. I mean, yeah, Seth Jones on defense, he signed quite a while. for the Hawks, but it's not going to be one of those things that we're worried about because they have a ton of cap space because they re-signed a couple players to a couple smaller deals, but nothing right now. We have 8 million in cap space, and that's just going. And we have a total cap of 75 million. So we have some room to play with, and we re-signed our goalie for a couple of years. If you know, because he hasn't been bad. It's just the product in front of him isn't exactly good. But like Nick Foligno, they re-signed him, keep him around a couple of years to play with Bedard. Uh, you know, just overall, it's gonna help.
Well, that's all you need. I mean, we got some. It sounds like we got some cash to spend, and we've got some picks, and you know, if we get this young stud to go to pair with Bedard, everything I've heard about Bedard is he's the next guy. So I mean,
They play at 6
so
tonight, so I would recommend tuning in. Also, it's Patrick Kane's back, um, so it's definitely gonna be one to watch.
yeah, I'll have to give it I'll have to tune in.
Perfect. Um, and then that's pretty much it for the Hawks. I mean, like I said, I want them to lose as much as possible right now. Just continue to move towards the future. We have draft picks, we have assets to do it, and then go out and sign. My ideal guy to go out and sign, I don't think it's going to happen. We'll probably have to trade for him. Is Austin Matthews from Toronto. Pair him with Bedard, and it'd be sick.
There you go.
All right, let's transition into the Bulls. Hit me with any information you got on the Bulls.
Well, obviously, the latest news with the Bulls is Patrick Williams is out for the rest of the season. So
Did see
that
that.
was yeah, that was tough to see that a couple days ago because he was having a nice year on a contract year. So I feel terrible for him. I like him a lot. I think you know he was really getting comfortable this year, along with a couple other guys on the Bulls. It's unfortunate that I mean, we're like I don't know ninth in the East, somewhere in there. So we still have some work to do. But you know, Kobe White is having a career year. He's been great. Io has been playing really well. Torrey Craig, I know he got hurt again recently, but I like the addition of him.
Yeah.
Vooch, I've liked him since we brought him over. I think he's a really solid big man. I love the addition of Drummond. Um, I think Zach is out again. Is he out for the rest of the year too?
Yeah, he's out for the rest of the year. I know that.
So no Levine, no Patrick Williams, and we're kind of towards the bottom of the East. I think we might still kind of be in the playoffs, or we're right around there, but um, it's been it's one of those weird years where a lot of these games we were on a hot streak there for a few weeks, and we cooled off right before the break a little bit, but we have these games where we don't look great. We come out slow, sluggish in the first quarter. We look really great in the second. We come back, we tie it up, we go ahead. Third quarter is sort of similar sometimes to the first quarter, where we come out sluggish again, and then we're trying to kind of come back in the fourth. And sometimes we do, sometimes we don't.
Yeah.
And it's just so frustrating to see that. I feel like we've got a bunch of talent. We just
Yeah.
The other night we were playing Boston, and it was just like I said. It came out sluggish in the first, came back, tied it, I think, by the end of the first half, came out strong in the third. I think we were down a few points at the end of the third, but it's manageable. Then you come out in the fourth and you get blown out the first couple minutes, and you realize why Boston is where they are. But I feel like we got a good team. I like Billy Donovan as the coach. I like what we've done, but they're one of those teams that makes you bang your head against the wall every now and then. I mean multiple times a week, because I love the Bulls, but yeah, I just feel like the last couple of years we should have been so much better than we've been. I don't really know what the answer is, but yeah, it's frustrating.
Yeah, I mean, I can honestly say probably since the Derrick Rose era has ended, I haven't like
Oh,
been too frequently. Kind of just based off of that because I was so invested, watched every game, because they were must-watch TV at that point, and then just it never. I don't know if they ever went through a true rebuild. I think that's just because Jerry never does that. We can blame it on him as he's the owner. But looking at it, maybe it's just like Patrick Williams never hit. I thought AK, their general manager coming in, it would have been a change. And granted, they went out and signed some, like you said, Vooch, you know, DeMar DeRozan, he's been
Yep.
huge. I love
Yeah.
DeRozan, another USC product. Um, Kobe White finally kind of came into his own now, and I don't know if it's just because he, is getting the opportunity to step up, and I think that's a guy that they can build around too. He isn't that superstar, but kind of one thing about the NBA is you need to have that one superstar that can really just carry you, and they don't have that. DeRozan's a great player, but he's not that guy. They need to find that guy, and I don't know if it's through the draft or free agency. Um, they need to do it somehow. And yeah, like you said, Caruso is good. Like these are all quality players. It's just the players that they needed to step up aren't. Levine, what was supposed to be the guy, he's clearly not, and they signed him to a huge deal. Nobody wants him. They tried trading him. Nobody wants him. Speaking of which, I remember seeing it on like ESPN or something on the bottom of the bar, or even scrolling through Twitter. They have not done a trade since 2021.
The Bulls.
Yeah.
And touching on Levine real quick, big fan of Levine, but yes, we definitely overpaid for him. And this year when he was healthy, we were losing games with him in the lineup, and then he got hurt the first time, and we got hot. We started playing so much better without him in the lineup, and then got hurt again, and now he's out for the season. So but he's kind of, I think he's supposed to be our best guy. I mean, he is a very talented player. I would agree with you. I think he's probably not the guy. I think he has his moments. Don't get me wrong. He can get you 30 any night. He can go for 40 or 50 when he really wants to when he's hot. But
Yeah.
um I mean, I just felt like with for me, I felt like we have a big three. I mean, maybe some people don't feel that way with some of the, maybe I think Levine, DeRozan, and Vooch are a little bit better than other people think, but I think those three should be a very formidable big three, and they haven't lived up to that yet, which is unfortunate because Vooch, you bring him over from Orlando, he was an all-star over there. He's not necessarily um, as big as Drummond, and he's not going to be your best defender as a big man, but he's a
Right.
guy who gets you 20 to 30 pretty much every night. He can get you 8, 10 boards or more. I personally, I love Vooch's game. I think DeRozan is a great player. He's the king of the mid-range shot. Levine, when healthy, is his athleticism is off the charts. And then, you throw some guys in there. Caruso's a great defender. Love having him. We
Yeah.
touched on Kobe and Io both having really, really great years.
Yep.
Um, so you feel like you have enough pieces there to be a pretty solid team. And, even with our record, we've looked really good against some of the best teams. The problem for the Bulls right now is you're in a position where we have to get hot again and we got to win, 8, 10 games in a row or something to try to move up up the standings a little bit. And I don't know if you've looked at our schedule, but you should pull it up because our next 10, 12 games or so are against really, really good teams. We just played Boston. We have the Warriors, the Clippers, I think twice in a matter of 10 games or so. We have Sacramento coming up. I think Utah we might play. I was looking at it recently. I don't know all the teams, but we play some really, really good teams. Denver might even be in there coming up. So, I mean, it doesn't get any easier
No.
for the Bulls coming out of the break. So, I mean, unfortunately, you just lost, Patrick Williams, but you can
Right.
see right there. I mean, there are some really good teams on that list.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to find wins, and at this point, and I looked at the standings too. They're pretty much middle of the road. You know,
Yeah,
they're sitting at ninth, so at this point, they're not bad enough. Like they can't keep up with Detroit or Washington. you know, they would have to fall off. So basically, you're rooting for the playoffs to lose in not even in the first round. It's in play-in games, and I think
yeah.
they're. I think the way the format is they have, like I said, I'm so far removed from it. I gotta, be a better fan and start watching them again. But, um, I think it's a 10 teams, and you got the two teams that for the play-in that can make it. Um, yeah, I mean, here's the thing. You make the playoffs and that's great. You sell money or you sell the tickets, you make money off of it, and you give you a Chicago team in the playoffs, but you really want to play Boston, get your ass kicked, Cleveland, any of the I mean, worst comes to worst, you're playing Milwaukee again.
Yeah. I
And they
mean,
just all have superstars, and yeah, like we said, but also is like DeRozan's like aging, Vooch is aging. I think we're stuck in this kind of realm until until they either fire the next guy, Jerry finally says, "Hey, here's extra money, spend it." That's the thing about the Bulls is I feel like they do spend the money. I don't feel like that's been the problem for them specifically. Not like the White Sox. I think it's more they just don't put it on the right players or they just don't mesh. And that's where, they have quality guys that are just not playing to their potential.
yeah, I mean, you just looking at those standings too. I mean, you look at you look at us. What are we? 26 and 30. I mean, look at Boston, 45 and 12. I mean, my goodness, golly, Miss Molly. I mean, we. It's been one of those years, but yeah, I mean, hopefully, like I said, hopefully we can get hot. I'd like to see us make the playoffs. I mean, I think we're definitely just looking at the East right now. I mean, with those teams, you'd have to assume we're going to be at least in one of those playing games.
Yeah, just
Um,
because Brooklyn's not good, Toronto's not very good, they're still like I said, they're gonna make the play on games, but it's not anything. And Miami will get hot eventually. I think Butler might have been hurt too. But if you look at just like overall, I mean, Oklahoma City, they're young. Minnesota's young. I mean, they got Anthony Edwards, superstar, Cat, superstar. You got Golden State's hanging on by a thread. LeBron and company hanging on by a thread. Give some of these other younger teams, time to bounce back. I mean, John Morant's out, so but like overall, when you touch on the Bulls, it's kind of a mess. And I think we just have to kind of ride it out and then hopefully. I mean, do you like question for you? Do you re-sign Patrick Williams?
I mean, it's a good question. I think it would have been nice to see a little bit more um, from him this year. I mean, he was arguably having his best stretch of basketball this season, so that's an encouraging sign. But I think the tough thing is what do you pay the guy and what is he going to be looking for? Because he's still a very young player. He's shown some good signs, but he hasn't shown um, us that he could, be like a star or a big time player like that. So um, that's that's the trouble for me is yeah. So you ask me, I don't know. I don't know if you resign him. I think if you can get him on a nice deal, maybe. But
He's just been hurt so often, you can't really say yes or
yeah,
no. That's the tough part for me, at least. Um, I thought he was gonna be one of those guys that could go up and D up Durant, D up LeBron, and it's just I don't know. He's never on the court and doesn't score, so. I guess we'll have to wait and see how the rest of this year finishes out, and we'll, hopefully do a playoff preview on them.
it's all you can hope for, right?
Yep. All right. Let's transition over to our favorite sport, probably. I can't speak for you, but one of our favorite sports is baseball. So let's touch on how about we touch on our top 10 players from each position. Outfield, we'll just do outfield total. Um, and we'll just go from there. And I'll start off with our let's go start off with first base, and I'll give you mine pretty quickly. Just Freddie Freeman, Matt Olson, Bryce Harper, Pete Alonso. I'm gonna keep Goldie there. Um, Cody Bellinger, and I'll touch on him in a minute. Um, Give me Christian Walker, Vladdy, and then I think I'm at nine. Give me Torkelson. I like his potential. I think he has a lot, he had a lot of spotlight on him. And then Nolan Jones from Colorado.
That's an interesting one. Is he first or was he outfield last year?
I think he still qualifies for first, but he played a lot of outfield.
Okay. No, he looks like he could be one of the next. And he looked really nice last year. So yeah, that's a nice pick. I like that.
Yeah,
Now those were your top 10 or
yeah, that's my top 10.
okay. I didn't know if that was like I think for me I have most of my top 10 are off of I don't know if it's MLB
That's fine.
.com or one of those, but we're gonna have most of the same guys in there. For me, this list had Freddie. They've got Harper in there at two. You know what?
Yeah.
I have no problem having Harper in the top couple. I know he hasn't played a ton at first, but I mean, obviously he's a stud and he's one of my favorite
Right.
players. So I don't have a problem putting him up there.
Same.
Uh, Matt Olson, obviously Goldschmidt, still have to have him in there. They had Yandy Diaz in there at five. I don't know if I agree with him necessarily that high or even on the top 10, but I
Top,
still think
top,
he's a
12,
solid player.
top 12, maybe.
Yeah. Polar Bear, Pete, have to have him on there. Vladdy. They had Brandon Belt at eight, Christian Walker, nine. Big fan of Christian Walker. And they had Tristan Casas on there to round out the top 10.
Yep.
One notable guy that I was going to throw in there, you mentioned Bellinger with the year he came off last year playing, I think the majority of his time was at first. He did play some outfield, but I think once
Yeah.
the Cubs figured out who they wanted out there in the outfield, and they wanted to try to keep Belly healthy as much as they could. I think first is very suitable for him. So um, yeah, a lot of the same names on there. Just real quick, I mean Freeman, Olson, Harper, Goldschmidt, and probably Alonso. I would imagine those are all easy guys to have up there. Freeman, last couple of years, is right up there for the MVP voting. I think personally, Matt Olson was snubbed for the top three
Yeah.
uh, MVP votes this year. I still love Freddie and
51
Mookie
homers,
with what
right?
they did. Yeah, 50 plus homers had. I think he had almost 140 RBIs. I mean, people don't just have
Yeah.
seasons like that. I know the average was right around 270 or 280, but that's still a great average. I mean, I think he got snubbed, but first base position. I mean, even Vladdy is coming off of a bit of a down year. He's still on there, and Christian Walker towards the bottom. He's coming off of a great year.
Yeah.
The first base position is pretty strong. I would say. I'll throw it to you on your thoughts.
Yeah, no, it's one of this like probably one of the stronger ones, especially with the addition of Harper. And you could transition it into like the fantasy perspective a little bit on there. Just all those guys are just, cornerstones that you want to have a good first baseman to kind of lead you in the home run category. Vladdy has fallen off, and I don't know if it's just he's his position, like not position, but his like swing. He needs to fix his swing or just be smarter at the plate. But it's hampered the Blue Jays, in my opinion, is him not hitting 40 to 50 home runs like he can. Yeah, and then just a couple sleepers too, just if you want to like throw it out there. Christian Encarnacion Strand from Cincinnati. Uh
Mhm.
Vinny Pasquantino. He got hurt last year, but dude's a stud. Played for Italy. Um, and then yeah, Spencer Steer, he can play there as well. But I think he played a lot of second base when India was out. I think we touched on that last week too. But one of the deeper positions, I'd say, arguably, even for fantasy wise.
Yeah, definitely. We'll obviously go through all of our top tens at each position, but yeah, when you look at that, I mean, you got a guy like Goldschmidt rounding out the top 4 or 5. I mean, that guy is any year could be number one. And when you've got a guy towards the middle of your top 10, I mean, like I said, even Christian Walker is a guy who could, he comes up with a big year and he could be in the top 5. So, I mean, yeah, it's very deep position. I would agree.
Yeah. All right. Moving on to second base. You want to hit me with your um what you got?
Yeah, I'll kick this one off. So they had Loki, since he's now moved to second base. I got no problem putting him there. He's a stud. You still have to have Altuve up there. I have him two, Semien three, Luis Arise four, stud, Ketel Marte on Arizona, round out my top five, and then I had Matt McLean. If he's going to be playing second, we got to see what position he's going to play
Yeah.
more of, but I would assume he's going to probably be at second. I believe this was Andres Jimenez on Cleveland,
Yep.
Edward Julian, Zach Geloff. I don't know how
I
you
think
say the
it's
last name.
I think it's like Galoff or something like that. Yeah.
Geloff. And then Nico Horner, a local resident of the Cubs, rounding out the top 10 for the second baseman.
Yeah. Um, Biggest ones, I mean, not much of a difference on mine either. I think I have Hong Sung Kim just because he can play second, but I think he's more of a shortstop of this year now that Tatis is out there. But Ozzy Albies is one of those guys that I think is really underrated and underappreciated, at least contractual too. He's making significantly less than the rest of them, but you know what? That helped them build that core that they have. Um, yeah, Mookie Betts, he's all over the place, but because he has that position eligibility, it's hard not to pick Mookie to be your number one. And then you have old man River, with Jose Altuve that just continues to produce. Hurt or not, just comes out and balls. And then what about your boy, your former boy, that got traded, Gleyber Torres?
Well, I'll tell you, wasn't a fan when we had to trade him, but unfortunately, that's one of those cases where he hasn't panned out
Yeah,
fully. And you know what? I mean, he's a guy where he could have a really big year and jump right back in there for me, but I haven't
yeah.
haven't seen nearly enough from him. He hasn't been nearly consistent enough.
No, and yeah, you can't complain too much. You got a World Series out of it.
I'm glad you mentioned Ozzy because that's one that I had that I didn't have on mine that honestly should be in there. I would probably have him in there over a couple of those guys, either like a
Right.
Julian or a Geloff or one of those guys.
Yeah, I mean, and then Jorge Polanco too. I'm surprised isn't on there. But
He's another big name.
Yeah, Luis Arias is one of the better ones. But second base is one of those positions that I think is just very weak, especially when it comes to a fantasy perspective. Very top heavy. But Marcus Simeon was an MVP candidate almost all year, and then I don't know if he really kind of fell off at one point. At least I didn't see it too hard, but like just it's hard to give it at second base. There was a couple other players that played a little bit better than him.
Yeah, and I know Semyon, I think in the playoffs, I think he went pretty ice cold, or at least in the World Series he did. But for me, I think he's a guy who posts pretty much every day, and when he's hot, he's one of the best bats at that position for sure.
Right. So we'll touch on shortstop and third base next. Pretty quickly, just moving on to shortstop. I got Bobby Witt Jr., Trey Turner, Lindor, Corey Seager, Gunnar Henderson for now, until Jackson Holiday comes up. Bo Bichette. I think Ellie De La Cruz is going to be back at shortstop. Um, then give me Xander Bogarts, and then rounding out the top 10 is Dansby Swanson.
Okay. Very solid list. I think you had a couple guys on your list that I would probably have on here as well. But from this list, we had starting off with number one, Corey Seager. Uh, tough to tough to not have him. Your number one shortstop at the very least. Lindor two. They've got Bogarts on here at three. I've heard that he might be moving to second base. I think Hassan Kim might be taking over shortstop, is what they said. So he
That's
might
correct.
not be on here next year, but he's a guy who, at least offensively, is going to be there. He should be there at the end of the year with some of the better numbers. Um, I like Dansby Swanson in there. Trey Turner is a guy coming off of a bit of a down year, but he is still a stud. Love him. Bo Bichette is, other than Corey Seager, is my favorite shortstop in the league. I love Bo. I love everything he does, and I think that if he gets even this much better, he's going to probably be. If he's not number one for me, he's going to be probably two or three. I love everything he does.
Yep.
Um, Still have Correa in there, even though he's coming off of a tough year. But I know that a guy like him, all it takes is for him to have a Correa type season, and he's right up there. I also have Willie Adames on there, Bobby Witt Jr., and J.P. Crawford. They had rounding out the top 10.
Interesting with Crawford. Yeah, Bichette's one of my favorites. That was one of the guys I actually enjoyed getting from you and via trade. As a keeper because it's a super late keeper, so that helps me out a little bit. Um, Lindor is Mr. Consistency every year. Sucks that the Mets suck. I'd like to see him in the playoffs. And then yeah, Corey Seager. I mean, he's a little banged up right now with his. I think is it oblique or
I think I saw something like that the other day. Yeah, you might know more than I would, but yeah, I might have
he
saw
just
that
had
briefly.
surgery or something. He should be back for the season. But yeah, uh, that guy's always banged up, but still somehow always manages to finish pretty high in the playoffs or playoffs in the fantasy rankings. All right, let's finish it out strong with our third base rankings. Off the top of my head, I will let you go first because it's your turn.
Okay, and this position I would say is also a fairly strong position. I would say, other than
Super deep this
it's
year.
definitely similar to first base. Um, so starting it off, they've got Austin Riley, number one, my buddy, Jose Ramirez at two, Manny Machado, Rafi Devers, Alex Bregman still have to have up there as just a
Oh yeah.
monster every year.
Yep.
They have Gunnar Henderson at third. We'll
Yeah.
see if he plays third, but I think that's where they're going to have him.
Yep.
They've got Arenado seven, which is another case of a guy where he comes off of a bit of a down
Really
year. If
bad.
he is a little
Yeah.
bit better than he was last year, he's right up there. They had Muncy on here, Isaac Paredes, and Justin Turner to round out the top 10 of third baseman.
Yeah. Not far fetched with a lot of them. Um, I think you have to give Austin Riley still number one, or actually, not give him number two. Jose Ramirez number one. Austin Riley two. Devers is just such a strong player on a really bad team now. Um, but I think one player that we're missing out on that could be a sleeper is Royce Lewis from Minnesota. I think Minnesota, like I said, they're going to be a sneaky team this year just because the Central is so bad. Um, but yeah, between them and Baltimore, they're going to be really fun to watch. Baltimore with Jackson Holiday sliding in at short. I have a hard time believing they're not going to call him up. They'll probably extend him now, and then just keep him, especially with that new ownership group. Um,
Mhm.
it's kind of just digressing a little bit. It's crazy to think that Manny Machado was on Baltimore all those years ago. That's where he started out, and then went to LA, and then stayed on the West Coast.
Yeah, and I mean, Manny has kind of become one of those guys who, I think he came up as a shortstop, switched to third, and he's kind of been the last few years. It's just you could pretty much pencil him in for pretty much 30 and 100, and
Yep.
he's been a mainstay on this top 10 third baseman list for a while.
Oh yeah, yeah. 30. Let's see how many home runs. Yeah, he's had since 2021, 28 home runs each year and almost 100 RBIs. And he's pretty consistent in the field. Yeah, he gets banged up every once in a while, but like overall, he's still a stud, but he's 31 and there's a couple of younger guys out there that can kind of jump ahead of him, but yeah, it's crazy to think that, we've come that far from him. But yeah, Bregman too. Bregman's another one that kind of just keeps the team together, I think. I think he's one of those players that, you just don't want to face in the ninth inning with men on base.
Yeah, he's one of those guys too. I mean, he's another Mr. Consistency. It seems like you look up at the end of the year and he's, right around that 25 and 80 or 90, 30, 100 type guy. Very good glove at third. And he's another guy, obviously, Houston, that's been a topic of debate with some of those guys they've got coming up for free agency the next couple of years with him and Kyle Tucker. So it's going to be interesting to see. They've spent some money this last few years, and that's something they haven't done a lot in their franchise's history. So it's going to be interesting to see if they can come down with a deal with Bregman or Tucker, or if they have to move on from some of those guys.
Yep. I think that's the deepest position in sports right now too is just third base. Well, at least in the MLB. That being said, I think we should end on that high note. Save some of we'll touch on our outfield and starting pitching because it's a little bit deeper and more discussion. We'll touch on that one next week. And then we'll almost be at the combine, I believe. I think combine starts soon for NFL. Um, so we can close out here. Any closing thoughts?
Another good week, another good sesh, as they say.
Yep.
And Yeah, looking forward to doing it again next week with you, you gabagool.
Yeah, absolutely. And as you said last week, and I think it's going to be our thing, I think you guys just might like us.
I think you just might.